Hello, and welcome to another episode of Career Retrospectives right here on the Super Review Show. I am joined by my two co-hosts and good friends and Sheesh members, Kyle and Mike. What's going on, guys?
Yo, sheesh, what it do?
The sheesh is never going to go away. Let's put it that way. We are all set. And tonight we're going to be discussing Chicago's most recent release that came out a little bit earlier this year. I think it was July, I believe the release date was.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about Chicago's most recent release, Born for This Moment. And I'm very, I'm excited about this one. I'm excited about this one. Let's get right to it, shall we? I'd like to go first, if that's okay. Can I share my own thoughts on this for a sec?
Absolutely.
All righty. So going into a new Chicago album, this is a band person that I actually got into the past. I want to say, me personally, I've known who they were. I mean, I knew they had like the horn section. I know they were different and stuff like that. But I will say, listening to, I got into them over the past 3 or 4 years heavily. In fact, my Spotify Wrapped just came out, and they were my most listened to artist. I found out, which I didn't even realize that until the end of the year. I was just listening to their songs so much from like the 70s into the 80s and whatnot, and into the early 90s as well. And so when I heard that they had a new album coming out, and I heard they were touring, and so I saw them on the tour earlier this year too. When they came to our stop, and I saw them. It's funny, the day that I saw them was the day the album got released, to this album, Born for This Moment. And I gotta tell you, I overall, this is their first album of new material since 2014, so it's been about 8 years since they put out any new material. I mean, they did put out a Christmas album in 2019 that was just some new material, some old material, some covers as well of Christmas classics and stuff like that. But this is their first new album in about 8 years or so. So going into it, I was like, I'm really excited, and because this is my peak Chicago hiatus. I'm like, I can't wait. And overall, I mean, when I rank it amongst, because this, like, believe it or not, this is their 28th studio album and 38th album overall. Wow. They have put out that. Yeah, I know. I was doing a little research beforehand. They have put out so much content, so many albums. It's almost sickening how many albums they've put out, truthfully. But for this album, I was actually I enjoyed what I heard for the most part. I would not, there were some songs that's really stuck out to me. We'll get to our track listing in a little bit. There were some songs that really didn't hit the note for me, truthfully, believe it or not. But overall, I did like this album for what it was worth. But I'm excited to talk about the album. Who would like to go next?
I'll go. Yeah, I mean, it's just our initial thoughts of it, right?
Yeah, just initial thoughts and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a longtime Chicago fan. My dad's been he's gotten me into a lot of their stuff, and through kind of sharing albums together, and not so much as growing up as a kid. I mean, obviously I knew of their music, and the cheese stuff from the 80s, which I still enjoy. I've always been a fan of that stuff, as much as like some people cringe at it. But yeah, this album, there's definitely more miss than hit for me. But where it hits, I was satisfied with what I heard. It's a little inconsistent. It's got some, it's definitely one of the most backloaded, in my opinion, albums that I think I've heard in the review since we've started this, like, where most of the songs I like are either all in the end, or even straight in the middle, or to end. So yeah, I mean, but I'm definitely seeing a lot of inconsistencies, but some high notes when there were. So yeah,
cool. And Kyle, what do you got?
Yeah, so I guess I'll be the resident non-Chicago fan here. Never been a fan. I don't care for the horn sections. That just really brings it down for me. It's something I've never enjoyed. So going into this, my expectations weren't high, and it was pretty much exactly what I expected, if not maybe honestly slightly worse than expected as an overall listening experience for me. But we'll get into that later.
Cool. All right. Let's jump over to our where the track listing is right here. Luckily it's pulled up and not like, hey, where's the track listing? I'll read off the track listing, shall we? Title track, Born for This Moment. If This Is Goodbye, Firecracker, Someone Needed Me the Most, Our New York Time, Safer Harbors, Crazy Ideas, Make a Man Out of Me, She's Right, The Mermaid. I'm gonna butcher this. Sarah Dura Moore. I butchered that. I'm sorry, guys.
God bless you.
Thank you. You Gotta Believe, For the Love, If This Isn't Love, and House on a Hill. 14 songs. Like I said, it's their most their first release in 8 years. Do you mind if I go first again for my standout tracks?
Go for it, man.
Sweet. So 14 songs. It's a long album. It's almost an hour long. It's 57 minutes. I would say and believe it or not, this might be the first time on this show that might surprise a lot of people. I thought the title track was decent and wasn't the star of the show right on this one. I got to admit. So, I know Mike's flipping out right now.
Gee, someone write this. Cheers, write this down.
Yeah, I mean, Born for This Moment. I liked the song, but to me, it wasn't like the shining, song on the album. For me, I don't know. I liked it, but it wasn't like the ultimate, like, this is the best one since 2014. You know what I mean? But I gotta say, my standout tracks would have to be If This Is Goodbye, Firecracker, and actually the last couple of songs like House on a Hill and For the Love. Those are actually some standout tracks for me, because for whatever it was, like, this album started really strong, like, title track first, If This Is Goodbye, Firecracker. Then it goes to, some other tracks. Truthfully, as a Chicago fan, I'm not really the biggest on, like Crazy Ideas, Make a Man Out of Me. Not the biggest fan of those songs in the middle. But after it gets up to after For the Love, and basically the last three songs of For the Love, If This Isn't Love, and House on a Hill were kind of like a bit of a stronger point for me. Truthfully, I mean, I was listening to it literally before we started our live stream today, just getting ready for it. And I was like, you know what? I gotta say, the first three tracks and the last three tracks are really just, to me, the standout ones for me. So, like I said, Born for This Moment, If This Is Goodbye, Firecracker, and then the last three, For the Love, If This Isn't Love, and House on a Hill. I really wish that there was more of like, I mean, for those, I would say this not just for Chicago, but any band. Truthfully, I think any band, it's always best when you write songs together. And based on what we're seeing here, there's a couple outside writers on a couple of songs. There's actually there's a song on here called I don't know, not on here. One of the songs that was written on here was by one of their guitarists. I found out, who actually left last year in 2021. So he wrote a song, and then I guess he departed or whatever. But I don't see a lot of Robert Lamb's name. I don't see a lot of Lee Lochte name, and I don't see a lot of Jimmy Pankow, because those are the three original guys who are still in the band, believe it or not. I don't see a lot of their names in there, so kind of a bunch of their names were like in and out for me. Like, what is this? I liked overall what I heard, but as far as like the actual band itself writing, not many of the guys wrote the songs in here, and that was kind of like a little bit of a wake up for me, a little bit of a surprise. But overall,
Lamb is on at least half of the album, I think, right?
Yeah, Lamb is on most of it.
Lamb's on
as
the first one. One second.
I thought you were, yeah.
First one, fifth one. I'm gonna just make sure. Seventh, 9, 10, and then 12,
12
and 14.
Yeah, so he's at least half, I think, almost directly down the middle. Yeah,
I've always been a big fan of him. Truthfully, I've always been a big fan of him as a musician. Honestly, I've always thought he was the guy who played the piano on Saturday in the Park. I mean, that's just his thought process on the piano is genius in my opinion, because I played too a little bit, so, and I've studied his work, so I've always been a big fan of his playing personally. And Keith Allen, just want to make a quick note. Make a Man Out of Me. Keith Allen was the guitarist I was mentioning. He was with him from 1995 until 2021. So that he left after a long time, but he was actually pretty good guitarist. But he wrote that song too with Jimmy Pankow. I don't want to take up too much time here, but yeah, my track listing: the first three songs and the last three songs blew out. The middle ones are a little bit like on the more boring side, if you will. So but yeah, that's just
your
me.
most disliked song. Like, do you have a most disliked, or are they all even?
Just because the title alone, The Mermaid. You know what I mean? Like it's just 'cause, like I would say that my most thank you, Mike. Like my most disliked song would have to be The Mermaid. To me, that song is just like it's questionable. It sounds like The Little Mermaid almost, like the Enchanted Under the Sea stuff. I got some
Right.
vibes there of like, oh, I'm watching The Little Mermaid. What's going on here? You know, so whatever. But I mean that was probably my least favorite track on here. And but then it picked up once you got to track 12. So that's just me. But yeah, those are my standout tracks 1, 2, 3, and 12, 13, 14. Born for This Moment, If This Is Goodbye, Firecracker, For the Love, If This Isn't Love, and House on a Hill. Mike, why don't you go next?
All right. Yeah. So, I mean, as I said before, I'm a huge Chicago fan. I mean, I listen to their greatest hits almost like, I could on a car trip, I could listen to it all the way through and then through again. And I mean, just their stuff from the, like the 70s and, whatever, just like was some of the most just like some of the best guitar. I mean, the drums, the freaking big band sound, as Kyle knows, and I don't know if JT knows, I'm a huge big band, like orchestra in music fan. Like it literally touches a part of my brain that like isn't working currently, as you can tell. But like finally
Hence Electric Light Orchestra.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Electric Light Orchestra. I mean, it almost resuscitates some horrible pop music that they try to use that to kind of give it life. I kind of like it a little bit better because they're using some orchestration that requires talent and skill, like not just computers and iPads and all this kind of stuff that people are using on stage to make music, but like an actual real organic sound. So as we said before, some of the original members, Robert Lamb, Lee Loughnane, I think his name is Loughnane, James Pankow, and Walter Parazater.
Yeah, Parazater.
Yeah, they were some of the original members, 1967 to, obviously one of them's not touring with them, but I tried to like keep an eye on those songs with their names and see if like they brought some of that magic. So as I said earlier, album starts really weak for me. For This Moment, If This Is Goodbye, Firecracker, really didn't care for those tracks. They were okay. If This Is Goodbye, actually, I had a lot of problems with this song organically, like musically, sounding wise. It didn't have an organic. It had a beat in the background, which was very strange to me. Almost sounded like R&B, but like today's, like trying to use some of those beats, and it really sounded out of place. Musically, it sounded out of place. It lacked body. It lacked kind of substance to it. So it just kind of had a weird pacing to it. It would just pause for a couple seconds and then it would just go, and it didn't feel like it pushed along. And one of the major cons of this entire album is the drums. The drums are almost non-existent to, like, when they do exist, they're so weak. Like, I listened to some of their old stuff. Like, obviously, when they hit the 80s, they went to synth drums, and the drums obviously took a major hit. And I was hoping maybe they would bring back some of the original drumming. Like, you remember, like, the original drums that were on the album, they were fantastic.
Yeah,
and I was hoping for like some kind of a middle ground, but it seems like the drums took a major hit and they continue to be very drowned out and non-existent, which kind of hurts the beats of these albums, the life of blood of the rhythm of them. They have a very synthetic feel to them. So so starting off with those first songs, just really is not there. If This Is Goodbye kind of started growing on me because it was just a little catchy with some of its the vocals and stuff like that, but overall I just wasn't happy with what they were bringing. And then Someone Needed Me the Most, kind of like the cheese, the vocals stand out in a powerful way. It kind of reminds me of a Folgers song. I don't know about you, but like the best part of the way. I almost reminded me of, like, I almost went to my kitchen to get some coffee. Like, I don't even drink coffee, but like I literally
I'm gonna do that when I get coffee tomorrow morning.
Yeah, go listen to anyone. Yeah, go listen to that and try not to think about Folgers after you're done listening to that. So So those is kind of like, and then boom, the number 10 on this album for me is Our New York Time, my favorite song of the entire album by a country
Wow.
miles. Kyle, I
Wow.
know it's your least favorite,
It's
so
not.
you don't even got to say anything.
It's not my
What?
least. It's not my least
Okay,
favorite. Don't worry.
but it's there. It's there in the group.
It's
I
up
know
there.
it is. Okay, good. Our New York Time. I mean, I really enjoyed this song. It almost tricked my dad, who I showed it to, into thinking it was one of their original songs. It has a good environment to it while you're driving in the car. I just really like that. And then we go back into like songs I don't care about, Safer Harbors, boring, crazy idea, weird drums, once again, strange change of musical direction. Make a Man Out of Me is cheese, but it's a little bit better. She's right. And then I actually really enjoyed The Mermaid. It's got a unique I know it's got a unique kind of can't explain it. It's like a samba or a waltz or some kind of like it's cool. Like it just has a cool vibe to it. It's unique. It's different than every song on the album, which is why I rate it higher. And then the last four songs are some of my favorite songs of the whole album, except House on a Hill, which was boring. Once again, the drums were actually a little stronger on this track, but the song is boring, doesn't do anything, just kind of just spins its wheel. But my second favorite song on the entire album is If This Isn't Love. Great chorus, weak drums again, once again, but best chorus on that, second best on the entire album. For the Love as well, a little repetitive in the beginning, but actually goes off into some kind of a musical instrumental journey, which I love, which Chicago does some of the best backing band sounds and instrumentals. For the Love, You've Got to Believe, those two songs. Got to Believe is a little weird, just doesn't develop, but it's got some catchiness to it. So drums, cons, drums are weak, inconsistent songwriting, sound on some of the songs, too long of an album. I felt like it definitely added a bunch of some fluff in there, and then some hits. That's just how I was feeling about the album. That's right, I wanted to share this hilarious line from this song. So my favorite song, Our New York Time, had a freaking line that made me crack up laughing, and the cheese of the lyrics kinds of come in and like makes you laugh. And they said, "We lived on hope and we dreamed upside down. I laughed when you called me your big apple clown. The two of us, we vibe with life. What is this like? Are we like trying to break through to the today's youth's lingo?" Which vibe was a word they used back in the old days. So maybe Chicago feels like this is the time for them to use that in today's kind of lyrical, lyrical group, and be like, "Oh yeah, our destiny unclear. Monday nights, the vanguard. I still whisper in your ear." It's just so dramatic, and and calling someone a big apple clown is just bizarre. I just wanted to read that little snippet from the cheese of Chicago, who does it the best. The best cheese a band can do comes from like their 80s stuff, and some of them.
Oh yeah, totally. I know Kyle loved this album.
Come on, Kyle.
Yeah, you
give
can
it to
say
me.
that. So, yes, this album's way too long. For someone that's not a Chicago fan, that's not a fan of this style and the big band horns and brass sections, this was a chore to get through. I'm sorry, guys. This was like brutal to get through numerous times. So I'll start with the one song I actually did enjoy from here. And by enjoy, I mean the one song that I would go back to, which was actually Someone Needed Me the Most. It's cheesy.
I thought you were putting your pointer near Our New York Time, and I thought you were gonna mess. You were just messing with me.
It's total cheese.
Yeah.
But the vocals on this are the strongest vocals on the album. Lyrically, it's not bad. The only thing that prevents it from being higher in my books is, again, just the horns, the brass section. The brass sections on almost every song on here sound the same. It sounds like they just copied and pasted for each song. They're like, oh, so we did this on this song. How about you do that same ascension into the chorus, but in a different scale? And it's like, okay.
Now I wanted to add to that. I do also agree. This band feels like they are chasing their previous self in almost ways like you say, they use almost the same exact
almost every big band section of this was just do this ascension, but instead of the key of C, we'll be in the key of whatever in this song. And it's so many songs they would do that, and it'd just be this ascension into the chorus. I'm like, okay, that was.
And it feels like they're chasing their previous self, and in a lot of ways, it's almost like they re-listened to some of their old stuff and were like, all right, got to do it that way again. We can't use big band sounds in any way but the way we used to do it, because that's our sound. It's like, no, guys, like your sound is something that it evolves over time, you know. So,
and I also just want to say that a lot of this for me was very just mid, because I was trying to look at it objectively. I was trying to take my personal past feelings on their music out of this and just look at it from just my objective viewpoint, which I managed to do for the most part. So a lot of these songs I just thought were mid. I was like, if these were on the background, they'd be inoffensive, whatever. And a lot of the songs were like that for me. Songs like Make a Man Out of Me, Safe Harbors, just things that were, if they were in the background, I just wouldn't think anything of it. Firecracker, Born for This Moment also fall into that. Now I'll get into the ones I really didn't like, because there's quite a few of them. But one I'm going to start with JT. I'm surprised you liked If This Is Goodbye, because if you take the horns out of that song, it's just a Maroon 5 Geordie song. It has the most minimalistic modern pop instrumentation, but they got around it by being like, we'll throw some horns on here. That's the only thing separating it from Geordie. It's legit. Go back and listen to it compared to one of the better songs from that record. Other than the vocalist on top and some horns being thrown in, it's the same thing. There's just such a minimalistic beat. Also, most of these songs, I'm just going to use this as a general statement, the guitar is so buried on so many of these tracks that occasionally you'll hear a lead guitar part and it'll actually be really good. And it's like, wow, that should be the forefront. That should be what you're doing more of here, but they don't do it. So honestly, with that said, I don't know the inner workings and why their previous guitarist left, but maybe it had to do with the direction here of burying the guitar in the mix every time you want to have a song. Now, Mike, I'm going to counteract you here on our New York time. I actually will say, I think the jazzy instrumentation actually works the best on that song out of any of them. Hands down, that's the one song it didn't bother me on. But the phrase New York time gets beaten to death so much within the first minute of that song that it drove me nuts. It drove me actually nuts, because I was like, who wrote these lyrics and thought, we'll use the same phrase this many times? But I also agree, crazy idea. It's boring in a really bad way. Mermaid, I agree with JT. It's one of the worst on here. Sorry, Mike. It's insanely boring. It started to put me to sleep. But I'll get to my two least favorite by a landslide. The song She's Right. The vocals on this record were the saving grace for me. Almost every song had vocals that were technically proficient, interesting, and worked very well. This song is not one of them. This song, going for like that deep, gritty vocal style, didn't work. It's an annoying chorus and it's very repetitive, which is another common thread with most songs on this record. You read the title of the songs here, that's essentially the chorus repeated to death throughout the entire thing. And then I think me and Mike are also on agreement on House on the Hill. Awful song. It is the most boring. It is the most boring song on here. It is insanely mind-numbing, and it was putting me to sleep.
Say it, Kyle.
We just ended it on If This Isn't Love, and I hate this song. It was actually one of the most mind-numbing songs I've heard all year from a actual legacy, one of the biggest bands out there.
And it's funny that you say the gritty vocals, because there was a guy who passed away in the band. Kath was his last name. I think it was.
He shot himself
Terry?
in the head.
Oh, really?
Terry
Holy
Kath, he shot
crap.
himself in the head by accident. He was high.
Wow.
Not kidding.
Wow. Terry Kath, he had the gritty vocals,
Yeah.
and this is okay. Now, some people might come at me for this and go, "Oh, they're just replacing an element of the band that was there and now it's not." I get it. You're trying to, so the horns sound like this, we're going to play the horns like that. The gritty vocals were like that. Now we're going to replace somebody who's going to do the gritty vocals like that.
Mhm.
Like music is not an equation. You don't have to go, oh well, I got to replace this with that. You can just kind of play. You can just get somebody in the band who's going to perform and leave it at that. You don't have to have those elements there. And I feel like what Kyle was saying is exactly like it's just like, oh, we're going for this, and because our old stuff had that, and not for the sake of just I get it, but it's just it's very formulaic and just not necessary.
I just feel like it's just an example of a legacy band just throwing whatever at the wall, seeing what sticks, and trying to become relevant again in a way, because there are certain songs, specifically If This Is Goodbye, like I mentioned, doesn't surprise me that was the single here, because it's one of the minimalistic modern pop trend. But they said, let's throw the Chicago style on it, throw some horns on it, that'll make it better, which I guess it made it more interesting. But at the end of the day, I guess I struggle to see who this record was really for, because I think there are songs on here that do hit that old school sound that older fans would enjoy, but I think there's also a lot on here that does go towards that more modern pop stylings of just being minimalistic, and I just don't think it works.
So what were your top tracks, and what were your top tracks were, and your least favorite, or which
my
one?
tops? Someone Needed Me the Most was really the only one that I took away from this. Other two that I guess would be close, Born for This Moment and Firecracker, I thought were interesting.
Yeah.
Other than that, everything else was just super either mid or I just really didn't like it.
Okay.
The ones I disliked the most, She's Right, House on the Hill, were by far the two weakest. Mermaid and Crazy Idea were close behind, and Our New York Time was like right behind that one. And then the rest were either just boring and inoffensive, or just kind of there. It's
right.
All righty. I'm just looking up something really quick. It's funny you mentioned Terry Kath, because it's funny, their earlier stuff is so guitar driven, it's crazy. It's like harder edge guitar with horns. I would almost make the argument that it's the band Cream with horns. They're like their first 2 or 3 albums,
which is significantly more interesting than this.
Did you listen to that, Kyle?
I have. I'm still not the biggest fan. So for me, big band sounds like horns and brass, I've never liked it. It's just never like agreed with my ears. Just a personal taste of mine. I go for more orchestra, like string instruments, like violin, cello, things like that. I'd much rather a band incorporate that than big band styling jazz, but that's just a personal preference.
Gotcha. Cool. Give me 1 sec. Let me just pull it up here. Any other track listing stuff at all, or we're good?
Good on my end.
That's good.
So let's do some let's wrap it up here for a little bit. So our overall impressions, our last our rating as well. I'll go first. So for me, there are many different parts of this that there are some points, as I said, that I enjoyed. There's some points that, like the middle of the album was very much a low point for me, listening to it, as far as just like what and truthfully, did I expect this to hit like the high note of like their first 3 albums or even their first, the 70s style. Did I expect it to hit that high of like, oh wow, this is one of those? No, I mean, I do agree with Kyle's point, though. I will say this is a band that, I mean, their last album was 8 years ago, so they're trying to put out new. I respect them for trying to put out new content. I respect them for trying to put out an album that they felt that they might feel relevant to the time and stuff like that of 2022, almost 2023. I just there were some lows, but there were some definite highs for me, as I mentioned, like the first 3 songs for me and the last 3 songs for me, truthfully. But that's just me. You've heard different opinions here as well. Overall, I would give. I mean, I'm gonna give this album a solid 3.5 out of 5 because I'm not, as someone who's in the Chicago fold of like, I will listen to. I have not delved into their '90s material yet because I mean that's a whole different ball game as well because they were in the '90s. They were trying to like experimental sounds and stuff like that. I've done research on like they were trying to like change their way. Like, you still use the horns, but like trying to make it like a different type of Chicago. Like in fact, one of they were going to release an album in the mid to late '90s, no, actually mid '90s, and they went away from the ballads and stuff like that. And actually, I found out that album they left their record label because they had so much faith in that album. I forget if they released it or not, but I mean that's something that I was like I give them credit for. They want to put out good content, and this one was good, but it wasn't like, was I expecting this to be like the next, like the best album of 2022? No, I was not expecting. I was just expecting a good release, and to me, overall I felt satisfied and I got that good release, but there were some low points here and there looking because I did listen to it when it first came out too, but I didn't hear the rest of I listened to it fully when it came out and then I went back to it just to prep for the stream. So yeah, but a 3.5 out of 5 for me. That's where I stand on this. I mean, might be a little lower than I expected, but at the same time, it's where I do think that it's going to lie there for a little while. And might go lower, might go higher. I don't know. We'll have to see. 3.5 out of 5 for me. Mike, what do you got?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I think the biggest thing to emphasize here is a band who makes an album. An album is a tough thing. Like a full album of songs that all are awesome and all like hit hard. And I think Chicago's obviously those days are beyond them. Like they have no, like all of the creative juices and the kind of like the environment that needs to be in place for that to happen. A full album of all songs that click. It's a hard thing to pull off. And I think whether my rating is low or not is irrelevant because if you can take 1 or 2 songs out of this and put them on a compilation of Chicago music and add it in with the rest of their massive catalog is like huge in itself. Like if there was nothing good on this, it would be a complete failure in my opinion. But because I could grab 2 songs off of this and add it to their catalog, the rating doesn't have to be high because it's really hard to pull off an album full of magic, at this point in their career. So for me, it's a 2.8 out of 5. I was almost there at a 3, but like I just couldn't get there because I mean, like seriously, like there's so many dips in like the songs that I'm listening to that like by the time I'm able to come away with something that has some memorability, it's like once again washed away by a lot of boring kind of just songs that are that just don't have the instrumentation when it comes to like the sound of the drums, the sound of the guitars, the sound of like the general kind of production with that keep me interested and motivated. The horns, it's drowned out by the horns, it's drowned out by the backing band, and you really lose a lot of the qualities there. So like it doesn't really matter. Chicago's awesome, and they really don't need to put out an album that's like a superstar 10, and if they do, it's like I don't know what they're doing, but they're able to pull that off. That's a very difficult. It shouldn't be an easy thing, and it clearly isn't an easy thing. But if you go on their YouTube or their fan pages, this is the greatest album ever.
That's every
it
fan
beats
page.
it's the greatest thing ever. Lamb walks on water. I mean, the usual the usual thing, but I mean, yeah, like I said, it really is irrelevant to to be a high scoring album. It has some cool, like Kyle was saying, it's a cool background album. Like you're driving along and you're playing it. It gives you the feels. And I wore my New York hat today because I'm kind of in protest to Chicago style pizza, Chicago in general. Screw you, Chicago. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, but I definitely 2.8 out of 5 for me.
All right, and Mr. Villain
Kyle,
himself.
the villain.
Yeah, well, someone has to give it the lowest score of the day, I guess. Yeah, so going into this, I don't expect many artists, if any at all, to release their best work at this stage in their career. It's almost never happens. It's very rare. With that said, this is also an artist that I've never been a fan of, as I'd mentioned. So for me, a lot of the songs on here became very boring very quickly. A lot of them follow the same formula. The vocals were the redeeming quality for me on a lot of these. They were very, very technically proficient, very well done. I think that a lot of songs would be elevated without the overuse of the horns. In a lot of places, it does feel like that they were just shoehorned in there just because they were like, oh, we're Chicago, we got to put this in here. A lot of times they followed the same exact formula with the horns, and it kind of threw me off a lot. So not my style. If you like the style, you might enjoy it a bit more than I did. It was also just way too long, way too bloated of an album. So for me, I gotta give it 2.25 out of 5.
All right, fair enough. Fair enough. Any other concluding thoughts before we wrap it up tonight?
No.
All righty. Well, we want to thank you all for watching and listening. Hopefully you enjoyed this stream. And if you have not already, subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on podcast format. And and we want to thank you guys for watching, listening as always. Tune in next week. I believe next week we're going to be doing our best and worst of the year, right? Is that right?
Either next week or the week after, I think.
Okay. Because I mean, we're so close to 2023. I was gonna say it's a good time to announce that too. We will be doing a best and worst ranked list of the year that we've listened to or talked about on this stream as well. So we'll give you the feedback on there too. I want to thank Mike for joining me and Kyle as well. And for all of us here at the Super Review Show, stay safe and listen to Chicago. Well, some people, not everyone.